contracting and procurement, and the budgets for those services. The first item on the agenda is the monitoring report for the ECM to note. And Mr. Mulholland, do you have anything you want to say on this?
I don't. It came to follow, and it's all been updated by all sections, so it's there for comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll just draw members' attention to three things. The first one is this disability awareness training, safeguarding awareness training for taxi drivers. It began some months before COVID. Now we've around 1,600 taxi drivers in Bolton, Hackney Carriage and private hire, and around a third have not had training yet. The number on your document is 477. The council is arranging a cut-off date, likely summer 2024, and then the ECM with the officers will review the training needs of drivers going forward. The second item to draw your attention to is 26/7/21, and that's community asset transfer. That's Rock Hall, that's in Moses Gate Country Park. Now that is being drawn up in the delivery phase. So that's a property item, CAT as we call it. That's being drawn up in the delivery phase of the National Heritage Lottery and Council Regeneration Plus Culture project. And that project's permission to start was given on the 27th of February 2024. Last item, 13/2/2024. Now that's just a reminder that on the meeting when the decision was made, always the title is now Community Centre at Presto Lee Kersley. So thank you very much for that. Let me just ask members, is there anything you might want to raise or say about items on the monitoring report? No, that's fine. But thank you very much.
I've just agreed to note that, Councillor Howard. That's fine. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. I've agreed to note that. Very grateful, Ian. Just before we go into the next two items, we've got with us today the Head of Regulatory Services at the Council, which includes licensing, and that's Mr. Andy Bolton. Okay, along with the Director, John Dyson, and the Assistant Director, Mr. Gary Parker as well. So I'm going to hand over to Andy Bolton for pest control, free pest control rodent treatment service. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I trust that all members on the call have had sight of the document. I am aware it was circulated roughly around a week ago. So this is the report for the reintroduction of a free pest control service for private and domestic properties only. So the report initially starts off, I'll just briefly take you through some of the key aspects of this. So it talks about the statutory duty that the council has to keep its own land free of vermin, rats and mice, but also uses other means and methods such as legal notices to deal with the problem. It talks about how vermin impacts on people's lives and why it's seen that this problem is worsening in some cases due to a number of different factors. The paper then talks about the current structure of the service that is operating at this moment in time and the budget that's connected to that, and the fact that a charge is applied to any pest control treatments that are requested by members of the public at this current time, and the actual rat and mice charge was introduced back in 2020. It's fair to say that since this charge was introduced, there has been a noticeable decline in the demand for this service concerning rodents, and the team have actually reported that they're finding evidence of the public applying their own treatments and methods to control vermin. This is further compounded by the fact that evidence suggests that vermin disproportionately affects the poorest and least well-off sections in society, and the problem appears to be exacerbated by the cost of living crisis. This is also supported by statistics that feature within the report. Taking into account the report detail and its proposal to reintroduce a free rodent treatment service for all residents occupying a domestic property, as long as they fall into a specific criteria which is highlighted at 2.10 in the report. It is also important to point out that the service will be aimed at all owner-occupier rented properties, but excludes those rented by housing providers and registered social landlords at this time. However, it's also important to point out that the council makes every effort to work with housing providers where possible. If agreed, it's expected the service will experience an increasing demand, and detail has been contained in the report of how the free treatment service will be delivered. Additional budget will also be required to support the free service, and that's also detailed at 4.13 within the report. It's also very important to point out that the service continues to grow in the commercial sector, providing cost-effective and competitive rates to businesses such as shops, hotels, restaurants, takeaways, and the private industry, as well as a wide range of facilities that would be considered commercial in the traditional economic sense. A piece of separate work is taking place to look at IT systems and improvements around those that would also support the service, but potentially other services within the council too that offer booking type facilities. So the options that are provided within the report are option 1, to provide a free rodent controlled service to owner-occupiers of domestic properties. Notice that above referenced exemptions within the report. And option 2 is to do nothing and keep the current charging policy for rodent treatments in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the report. Can I ask members, if I don't notice if your hand's up, please just speak into the microphone. Does anybody want to raise questions or say anything? Maureen, Councillor Flitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, do we know what registered social landlords have planned, for instance, like to Bolton home? Are they intending on introducing this service free of charge? Because I just think it's hugely disappointing for our residents that the people who probably are going to need this service most won't qualify as it stands.
I've got a view. Do you want to say anything, Andy?
Yeah, so Bolton at Home, for instance, currently have a contract in place with a third-party company that offers pest control services to all their properties. Now, they do have a criteria where some disadvantaged families or people with incapabilities may fall into an exemption area where they don't have to pay, but some other parts of the housing sector are charges apply, but they work separately from the council. Occasionally they do ask for our services, but they've got somebody else that's currently providing their services.
Yeah. Do you want to follow up at all, Maureen?
I just think there's like a lot of people who would need this service are going to be slipping through the net, sort of thing. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I'm grateful for your words, very much indeed, and because I'm minded of the, it's a good report, and I'm minded of the detail of those living in private rented accommodation and the problems that they run into with rats and mice in Bolton. I think I'm really pleased with the social landlords in Bolton, that certainly one of them, that is keen to actually look at partnership working and does talk openly about issues of rats and mice. And I mean, Andy's just run through with you their contract, so it's just to highlight that we're going to carry on that dialogue with social landlords in Bolton. You know, that's what I want to do as ECM at the present time, and obviously we'll bring any updates. We'll bring any updates, and when I come to the decision, I mean, there might be more questions. It's a reminder that on the decision, there's going to be a 6-month review, and that's one of the things that will absolutely be reviewed. Our work with social landlords on this matter. Amy Cowan,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. Just a quick question, and forgive me if I've missed this. I just wanted to check that this is fully costed out in this year's budget. I did have I must say, a cursory glance through the budget looking for it. I couldn't see where this was costed. As I say, forgive me if I've missed it. I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Well, the paper, I'm very grateful to the council, because the paper makes it clear that it's corporate money. What I mean is it's an uplift. It was recognised as important. and the money is set out in section 4. I've got the director on the call, or Mrs. Pollard. Does anybody want to say any more, just to help as to what it says about the finance? Do any officers want to say anything? Mr. Dyson, thank you.
John, mute, John.
John, mute.
My apologies. Thank you, Chair. Just to offer reassurance to members that in developing this proposal, we have had full consultation with our financial management team and the Borough's Treasurer regarding additional provision to fund the service and the additional resource implications. So that has been very much factored into our financial projections moving forward. And I think obviously it's referenced in the report. What we don't have absolute certainty on at this moment in time is the level of demand that will be generated through introducing this free service, and I think that's why it's important that we take that opportunity to undertake a review in 6 months' time, just so that we can assess demand relative to the financial resources that we have available and committed at this point in time. That may bring forward further discussion about capacity and resource, but at this point in time, provision has been made for the service based upon the resources or the additional resources that we've allocated and are referenced in the report. But I think my colleague Janet wants to come in as well, Chair.
Thank you very much. Janet.
Thank you, Councillor Haworth. Mr. Dyson. So yeah, I just want to confirm that the funding has been earmarked for this project, this proposal. So there'll be no further pressure on the Directorate's fund finances for this.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else on the call want to say anything about this decision paper? No, if not, I'm going to go to the decision. So I am recommended to approve the reintroduction of a free domestic rodent, rats and mice treatment service. I'm going to authorise the Director of Place, who's on the call, to revise existing operational processes and working arrangements to reflect the provision of a free domestic rodent service. For me, this does include working with social landlords. This is just some commentary from me. And also, as you've heard, very importantly, there's going to be a 6-month review, and that is going to look at financing and demand. Thank you. And also, I'm going to authorise the Borough Solicitor to carry out any necessary legal formalities and authorise the Borough Treasurer to complete all financial formalities. Thanks very much indeed. The next item on the agenda is fixed penalty notice level under environmental offences, and that's for Mr. Bolton, Andy Bolton, Head of Regulatory Services. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. And again, once I'll take it that everybody's had the opportunity to see the report details that's been circulated. This is a short report, and it sets out proposals to enable the fixed penalty notice fine levels linked to fly tipping, household duty of care and litter offences to be suitably adjusted under government measures. So the report explains that under these new measures I've just mentioned in 2023, the ability for local authorities to review and increase fixed penalty fine levels for certain crimes associated to the illegal waste disposal of rubbish were introduced. The fixed penalty fine itself is commonly used within the service and within local authorities up and down the country, and it acts as an alternative means to prosecution. Basically what that means is it offers the recipient of a fixed penalty fine the opportunity to discharge their liability to court proceedings by paying the full amount specified set out within the 14-day time period. So in essence, if they're offered that opportunity to pay the fine, the matter is then addressed and settled at that point, and it does not progress further to court. Failure to pay would see it going further into the courtroom environment. So in Bolton currently, as I mentioned, we're using the fixed penalty notice for a wide range of waste offences. But as it stands at the minute, fly tipping attracts a £400 fine, but that's reduced to £300 if it's paid within an early repayment period of 10 days. Waste duty of care related to domestic waste, and that is where a householder passes waste to somebody who's not licensed by the Environment Agency and is considered an illegal waste carrier, they often then go on to dump the rubbish. They advertise cheap rates, and that's what attracts people to those services, but they are in the main rogue traders. That particular offence also attracts a £400 fine currently, and is discharged at £300 if paid within 10 days. And the third area that is highlighted is litter. Now in Bolton, litter at the moment is a £150 fine, and that's reduced to £100 if paid within that 10-day period. So consideration around people's ability to pay the increased fine levels has been taken into account, especially for those residents living in the lower end of the economic cost of living spectrum. The report offers some details around statistics of payment rates and cases that have progressed to court, so it brings that out in the body of the paper. It also highlights the particular kind of fixed penalty. This particular kind of fixed penalty notice does not offer a payment plan or instalments. Basically, the fine is set out in legislation must be paid within a 14-day time period because it falls in the bracket of criminal. However, where financial hardship is emphasised, discretion to extend payment periods are considered and quite often granted for a set period of time. So what the report offers is the two options. And option one is to keep the current fine levels, or option two, which is the preferred option, and that would be to increase the current fine levels to, for fly tipping offences, £600, so that's 4 to 6, but with an early repayment of £450. Waste domestic duty of care will also go from 400 to 600 with an early repayment of £450, and litter will increase from 150 to 300 with a 175 early repayment. And we feel that this would act as an appropriate deterrent to people who are engaging in waste type offences. There would also be a 6-month review, as there was mentioned on the previous paper. So we would look at this again in 6 months' time just to assess, is it working, and do we feel that it was the right choice to be made at this time further down the road. Thank you, Chair. Back over to yourself.
Thanks very much for the work on this. Members, do any members want to raise any questions, say anything? Councillor Cohen, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth, and thank you for the report. I've had a good read through that. I just wanted to ask why the guidelines have been given, obviously, and there is scope there under the legislation passed in July of last year to increase the fines to a greater extent than we are proposing to do. And I just wanted to ask why we aren't going to the fuller amount, to the maximum, really. I do note, I should say, I have noted in the report the reasoning set out about the court fines not yet increasing proportionally, and that, you know, we may tempt people to go down the court route rather than pay the fine, and that would increase pressure on our legal services and increase costs for us, etc. But I would say to that, the cost element of going to court is quite significant. So it's not just for the individual who is, you know, being prosecuted for the littering or fly tipping offence. If they're offered a fine, or it is quite a gamble still, even given if the fines were raised to the maximum, it is still a gamble to say, oh, actually, I'm going to chance my arm, I'll go to court because I might get a similar fine. Because if you do get the similar fine, you will also get whacked for costs. So there is still that deterrent there as things stand. Not to mention, obviously, that those court fines may well be increased to catch up with this current legislation. But I just wanted to query that because I think it's an opportunity to, you know, to increase that deterrent and income, you know, on the back of offences that are committed. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Who wants to speak?
I can come back in on that, Councillor. And okay. You're right, sir. The ability to increase the fines higher is there within the legislation. However, I'm sort of from this background, environmental enforcement, and It was my view as well, with speaking to some of the officers in dialogue with the wider team, chief officers, that it's kind of a bit of a balancing act, because I think you've got to pitch this at the right amount. If you push it too far up, it's going to be out of reach of people's financial ability to be able to pay the fine. And I would suggest, working in Bolton for many years, that if we started to issue fines for fly tipping around about £1,000 financial denomination, you would see very little, if any, that were paid. I think at £600, it's quite reasonable. It's still within the scope of people's ability to be able to pay. But I think anything beyond that, what you'll be doing is you'll be pushing more cases back into the court system, and that defeats the object in a way, because it's officer time that then needs to produce case files, statements, exhibits, so on and so forth, reports to legal services then need to handle that file, produce the bundle, and then that is passed over to the courts, where additional cost is then added. So you're going to see less officer activity on the ground, because what we'll be doing is confining our officers to the office itself to produce more case files, to progress them to court, and there's a greater cost involved in that. I mean, there's nothing to suggest that in 6-12 months' time we can revisit this again. But I think personally, from my own professional experience, that these fine levels have been pitched at the right level.
Thanks very much. I just want to comment before I bring others in that I am persuaded that I want us, while I'm the ECM, to be able to do as much as we can at local government level. I want us to be able to have some finance in. I think we can do good work, because what we do is we have a whole system approach to this. We fine people, we use a deterrent, but the evidence base still tells us to use behaviour change work as well, to really get on top of this, so that we know any pound that we spend in the Bolton Borough at this council on these matters, we get the best bang for our buck, basically. So we do clean up, we do prosecution enforcement, and we're happy to be harder on that, and we also do behaviour change. Mr. Parker, Gary, did you want to come in at all? Yeah.
Yeah, my hand was up, Councillor. Thank you for bringing me in. I was going to answer the question, but Andy's done such a brilliant job. I've got nothing to add to that. Just to reiterate that in 3.7, we have left that option open for us to review this within the 6-month time frame.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. We will. We'll look at those fine levels. The ECM will look at those fine levels on the 6-month period. I've got Councillor Flitcroft and then Councillor Priest, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for a bit of clarity, really. I think I know the answer, but with the duty of care section, when the fines are imposed, is it the person that's engaged this company to dispose of the waste, or the company that have disposed of the waste that gets the fine?
Well, it's actually both, if we can catch both. But yeah, you're right. This particular fine that's highlighted in the report would be aimed at the householder for passing waste to an illegal waste carrier. Now, what's expected from them is some reasonable checks to ensure that they are registered, so as to see the licence and make sure that they are registered with the Environment Agency. And that can easily be done. They carry permits with them, these companies. I think most people are attracted, as I mentioned earlier on, to cheap rates that are advertised on Facebook and other social media platforms, where you can have, you know, a garden full of rubbish removed for £20–30. It's not possible for that to be disposed of responsibly and through the correct channels, because there would be a cost applied at the disposal centre that would outweigh that initial cost. So straight away, you know that there's something slightly dodgy about that. Encouragingly, Greater Manchester Waste Authority are at this moment in time running a big campaign, and all the 10 Greater Manchester authorities are going to be involved in that to raise awareness. And we've done it on many occasions in Bolton too. And we always, when we do a press release, state the fact that you should be checking whether anybody taking your waste is registered and authorised to do so. And there's some simple checks that are on the internet that show you how to do that. But hopefully we can cascade this message far and wide across the Greater Manchester region. So yeah, as it stands, it would be the person, if their waste was found dumped illegally, and we can trace it back to the householder, and we challenge them and they can't offer any evidence that reasonably they checked the person out, then they will be subject to a fine. That's all part of an investigation, and many factors form that decision at the end of the day. But on the other side, you mentioned the person dumping the waste. That would be an act of fly tipping, and therefore they'd be liable for a fixed penalty or prosecution in those set of circumstances also.
That's two separate things.
Yeah, two separate things.
Right. Can I just ask, when we do our awareness campaigns for this, I don't know if we do it, but if we don't, then it would be a good idea to do it. If we could put an example of what a permit looks like for the public to see, so as they know what they're looking for, because I don't know what one looks like.
Yeah,
Somebody could just flash a piece of paper to me and say, there you go, that's my permit, and I wouldn't know if it was or wasn't.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll look into that, Councillor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Maureen. Much appreciated. Councillor Priest, please.
Can't hear you, Councillor Priest. You're on mute.
Oh, you on mute?
Sorry. I did lower my hand because Andy and Gary both answered it. I think it is a difficult issue as to where to set the fines to get the right level of deterrent and get the most payments without having to take them to court. And I think it's a very good idea to monitor it over 6 months and see what that proportion is. Does it change with the increase in fees? And I would really suggest that if it doesn't change, then we look at maybe pushing it up a little bit, because you know, if you go to other countries that have got whacking fines for this kind of thing, you see very little litter. And I know there's different countries with different values, etc. But you know, as many of us do go out litter picking, it is totally frustrating when you see massive fly tips and etc. I mean, a lot of our work is around this. So yeah, please, let's review it in 6 months and let's see where we are. And if we can push it up and keep pushing it till we reach that sweet spot, then you've got my support totally.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, especially for the support today on new fines. That brings us, unless there's anybody who I've missed who wants to comment at all or ask questions, that brings us to the end of the meeting today. So thanks very much, everybody. All the best.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard, sorry, you've agreed the report.
Forgive me. I need to. I've never done this before. We can all have a giggle because I'm so particular. I've not. I enjoyed the discussion so much. I've not gone to the front page. Where is it? Let me find it. Here we are. Right. The recommendation. Executive member is recommended to. So I approve the increase to the fine level for waste offences as recommended within the report and include a discounted early payment option. Thank you very much, Ian. Much appreciated that you made sure I did that before we all signed off. It's really important.
Right, thank you. I'll just stop the recording just a second.